Welcome to the licensing subgroup A hearing. Could I have nominations for a chairman for this meeting, please?
Could I propose Councillor Davidson, please?
Happy to second. Thank you.
What a responsibility. We're gathered here today as the Licensing Committee Subcommittee A to review a licensing application for a premise in Farnham Downing Street. Before we get going, we need to go through some procedural activities. Are there any disclosures of interests?
No.
Good. So we can then proceed. But before we do so, I'd like to just make sure that we have our officers who are joining us today to be introduced. That's Kimberly Sohn, who will be taking from Democratic Services, who will be minuting the activities, and for Gillian Carson Jones, who's our licensing solicitor, who will give us any appropriate advice, as indeed will Paul Hughes, our licensing manager. So if we can proceed with the application, it's for a alcohol licensing in number 17 Downing Street. It's a new premise which is under construction at the moment. I'm not sure whether I'm the best person to introduce it. Can I leave our applicant, Mr. Hamilton, to do just that? Yes, oh, before you do so, word from our licensing manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in front of you an application for a new premises licence for Hamilton's Tea House, 17 Downing Street, Farnham, where we've received one valid representation from other persons, which is attached to Annex 4. There have been no representations received from the responsible authorities. In brief, the applicant seeks to licence the premises for the sale of alcohol 0900 till 2300 hours, 7 days a week, with opening hours to match. We have since had, and that's sort of why there was a slight delay in the opening of this hearing, some videos sent in from the objector, which I can confirm that I have shown the councillors, showing Downing Street and the activities on a typical Sunday night, according to the objector's email. Officers request that you consider the matter.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you. I've got a number of questions, but they're quite minor issues, if you don't mind. So I'm slightly confused, if you don't mind me saying so, by the application to open for the extended hours, but later on to read that actually you're proposing at the moment just to open till, I think it's 6 o'clock in the evening. Can you tell me what will cause you to open later in the evening? Is this just a planned expansion of the business, or is it just going to be for specific events pre-booked?
Yes, the application in principle is just to give me the opportunity, should it arise, to host occasional private events. The core of the business will always be, because of our core audience and our menu, 10 till 6, Monday to Saturday. I wanted to give ourselves an opportunity, should someone come up and want to do Grandma's 70th birthday and do a private afternoon tea from 6 till 9 on a Sunday evening, or on a Friday evening do a birthday afternoon tea with fizz for Mum and Dad's 50th wedding anniversary, that opportunity, without, not necessarily that it's a rigmarole, to apply for a temporary event notice every single time. So that was purely the reason for asking for the extension, just to give me the flexibility. There's no plans to expand in the evening. I've spent 30 years in the industry. I'm too old now to be working too many late nights and weekends. So it's purely about those ad hoc events where I decide that the event is right for the, for the establishment that we're building at Downing Street.
Thank you for that. Could I ask a further question? Will you be serving alcohol only with food?
Yes, that's our intention. We have a very small number of alcohol. A key a part of what we're trying to create at Hamilton's Tea House is to bring afternoon tea, make it available all day, every day without pre-booking. So you don't have to wait till after 3 o'clock. If you want afternoon tea at 10 o'clock in the morning and you haven't pre-booked it, you can just turn up. And then obviously with that, we look, parts of celebration, someone would have a glass of fizz with their afternoon tea. We have an incredible product that we're bringing to market that you can only purchase in this country at either Fortnum and Mason's or, as of next week, Hamilton's Tea House in Farnham. And that's a Copenhagen sparkling tea. And it's a fermentation process of 13 afternoon teas. But it is fermented, it's 5% alcohol. I need a license to sell that. And also our price points mean that actually it's not the sort of place that people are going to pop into, even for an afternoon glass of wine or a glass of fizz. It's meant to be served with food. And any event we have, private event that we have in the evenings or the weekends, it will be sold as a package where it's an afternoon tea rather than a drinks party. It's food with some drinks rather than a drinks party.
Thank you for that. Chairman, I've got a few other questions, but perhaps
It might be just best
Oh,
if you just
sorry.
carry on and then pass to Councillor Ward for his list.
Thank you. I have to admit, it's quite a few years since I've been to Downing Street. And looking at the plans, I wasn't quite sure how one would get from the tea house to the courtyard. It is sort of in more detail in the second plan, but I'm presuming that people will have to come through the tea house to get to the courtyard. And perhaps that you could explain with the carrying of food, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Yes, the courtyard, so the layout at the front is Hamilton's Tea House. Next door to that is the Frame Centre. And then there is the entrance to the courtyard. It's currently called Clayton Court. Within the tea house, if you go to the very back, there's a rear exit from the tea house, which has a very short 15-metre alleyway into the rear of the courtyard. So we've worked obviously with the rest of the tenants in the courtyard and the businesses, as well as the landlord. And we have a small number of tables and chairs at that end. So all of the food and drink and the service will take place from the rear of the building. And again, it will be seen more for walkers, people with large push chairs, walkers maybe with their dogs who we won't be encouraging to come into the premises. And it's not, and it's a small number. We're looking at about, I think we'll probably get about 12 chairs out there at capacity, and it's using the back end of the courtyard so that it doesn't impinge on the front entrances to either the Frame Centre or Waller Babies, which is a children's clothing store, which both have their entrances on the courtyard.
Thank you. That's my final question. And I'm sorry, again, I'm not, it's, as I say, many years since I've been to Downing Street, Holland House, Merton House, the old bakehouse. Could you tell me, are those residential properties? Thank you.
No, there's no residential in the curtilage. The building that I'm in, next to it, the Frame Centre next door, has the 2 rooms above as display rooms. And Holland House at the old bakehouse is a physiotherapist's. Holland House is a solicitor's. And then the other 2 businesses that share that courtyard or in the vicinity building-wise are the Frame Centre and Waller Babies clothing store.
Thank you. That's very clear.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Ellis has, as usual, done a sterling job and stolen all my questions. I have some observations on the objection, but I'll hold those until we've all spoken to the applicant, and then with your indulgence, I will make them later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. I have a couple of follow-on questions. I'm in the same position as Councillor Ward in that that Councillor Ellis has done a far too thorough a job in questioning. Following on the issues of the courtyard, I visited the premises, well, the courtyard, not your premises, yesterday. Noticed that and wondered whether the other players in the courtyard have any rights or given you permission for using the courtyard itself.
Yes, the permission to use the courtyard is written into my lease with the landlord, Nick Foster, who has shared our plans and our thoughts with all of the other tenants. They did have initial concerns and queries that they had for me, which Nick Foster fed back to me, and I gave my answers. And they're all happy. I've spoke to all of them individually. And you know, they see the potential benefits to their business, not so much the solicitors, but there are potential benefits for each of the other businesses, and I'm working closely with all of them. For instance, for the Frame Centre and Waller Babies, they see it as a benefit because their entrances are in the courtyard. So any activity in bringing people into the courtyard brings footfall past their doors, which is better for them. And both of them have windows that, you know, that aren't used at the moment, but look onto the courtyard that they're now going to be using for display. And I'm working with the physiotherapist because we're doing 30+ loose leaf teas in the tea house, and 4 of those teas are in a wellness range. And we're working with the physiotherapist that because often they get, you know, a partner will bring their client in and have to hang around a little bit, or the client, you know, has to hang around a little bit for between 2 sessions. So we're working on for you know, users of the physiotherapists, they'll get a free wellness tea to enjoy whilst they're waiting for their next appointment.
Wellness tea being the alcoholic fermented tea, no doubt. The other question that's going through my mind, looking at your premises, it's quite a narrow floor plan, and you know, with the tables and sittings in place, it is going to be, can be quite full, with limited cooking and serving facilities. How do you expect to manage the range of food and beverages to be supplied?
We've put together quite a simple menu. And as you said, we have very limited cooking facilities. We have a baker, we will be cooking off some baked goods. And again, back to our key offer of afternoon teas, we'll be doing freshly baked scones every day and other light baked goods. A lot of the cakes and a lot of the other additions on the menu will be brought in from local suppliers. So we're working with local small cottage industry businesses like Hello Bakehouse, Buttercup Bakes, and Mummy Makes Fudge to supply the other products. And then through my years, I'm a qualified chef. That's what I did at college. And through my years in the industry, I've been in hospitality for over 30 years. It's those tricks of the trade that when you're putting together what may look like a slightly more expensive menu, it isn't in kind. It's how it's reusing produce. It's being very careful with what you do, and it's about the preparation. It's all about the mise en place and preparing yourself in the morning, where you have a busy morning before the customers get there, and then it's just bringing things together in such a way. And yes, it's small in number. We will have a capacity internally of approximately 24 covers. But again, one of the other core elements of what we're doing at Hamilton's Tea House is it's table service and managed. So we're not really a takeaway, which is going to have lots of people, you know, back and forth and milling around. It's going to be a place where we hope people will come in and spend a little bit longer than they will in other establishments, take their time, relax, we'll look after them, and we will wait a service. And we, in our business plan, we kind of, you know, liken Hamilton's Tea House to the kind of the friendliness of a village store, with the and the kind of the local enthusiasm of a local, you know, produce cooperative, delivered with, you know, a Savoy's butler, the service of a Savoy butler, which is where my skill set comes in, and that's where I really see Hamilton's being different to every other place that's in the marketplace, certainly in Farnham at the moment.
Thank you for that. Have you got any more questions, fellow councillors? No? We now come to the issue of the objector. He's written and concerned particularly about the noise which could emanate from the premises, particularly late into the evening. You've answered that to a certain extent by saying that your plan is to close by 6 o'clock. If you had to provide service for a party or whatever running late into the evening, what plans have you got in place in order to contain the noise and not to disturb your neighbours? Do you want to add anything to that, Councillor Ward? Is that something which? Okay.
Some observations.
Right.
Yes, no, I mean, I completely understand the concerns of the objector. I think sometimes when you put a premise license application forward, it is difficult when you're asking for an 11 p.m. license all week. I think the assumption, because you don't know the applicant, would be that actually, if they're granted that ability to be open till 11 p.m. and sell alcohol, they will take that opportunity. So I understand the objection, but you know, as I've said, I've had 30 plus years in the hospitality industry. I've opened a wine museum in central London called Vinopolis. I've opened a beer museum in Burton-upon-Trent, the National Brewery Centre. It doesn't, you know, I'm not necessarily an alcoholic, but I know what I'm doing when it comes to alcohol. I know what I'm talking about. And I've spent most of my career organising events. I moved to Farnham 2 years ago and took over as general manager of Farnham Castle. Before that, I was looking after a 2,000-acre estate in Cheshire for Lord and Lady Ashbrook. I've put on events and dinners for members of the royal family, both in this country and from overseas. And I've ran events where each day we've had in excess of 10,000 customers at those events. So I know how to run events. I know how to look after people. And singularly more important than taking some pounds at a private event is the reputation of Hamilton's Tea House. So I wouldn't let people walk out drunk. I don't think actually with my prices that most people can afford to get drunk at Hamilton's Tea House. And for me, it's more about creating an experience where people are looked after. And I'm a great believer in the retail or the hospitality or the visitor attraction experience being much longer than the time you spend at the venue. It's everything that goes before with regards to helping people organize their events to give themselves an incredible time, and the kind of the aftercare. So making sure that people leave in an orderly fashion, that they're looked after, and that actually and then by the time they get home, they're still feeling the effects of having had a great time at Hamilton's Tea House. So for me, it's about managing those events, but long before I even get to the point where I need to manage people and manage the end of an evening, I wouldn't take on a private event if I didn't believe it was the right type of event for Hamilton's Tea House, which, as I previously mentioned, is Nan's 70th birthday, and it's some afternoon teas with a glass of fizz or Copenhagen sparkling tea for a couple of hours to celebrate. And actually, I'm going to do, and it's very well known, and certainly in our industry as well. If I can sell more tea than alcohol, I make more profit. You get more profit out of a cup of tea than you do out of a glass of champagne. So actually, I'm going to be concentrating on other products, and actually, the alcohol is very much a byproduct of what I'm looking to create.
Thank you. I think Councillor Ward, you want to carry on?
Yes, I just had a few comments about the objector who is claiming there will be drunks outside all over the place, which I think is highly speculative, and I think that might limit any weight I would give to that particular phrase. We've just watched a rather late submission of a video which was entitled "Typical Sunday Night in Downing Street," which I have looked at very carefully, and as a resident of Farnham who is often in Downing Street, I'm not sure that I would totally agree that that was a typical Sunday night in Downing Street. But since the applicant is normally intending to close at 6 o'clock, then I don't think they are going, or he and his staff are going to be contributing to the so-called typical evening in Downing Street. And there is no doubt in my mind that Farnham is moving towards a more cafe and entertainment oriented place. This applicant, the objector, I quite understand anyone would object to another licensed premises anywhere near them, but I think it is rather speculative. And I don't think that, from what I've heard of Hamilton's Tea House, it's actually going to add to the disruption which is claimed. Thank you.
Any questions from you, Councillor Ellis?
No, thank you.
I think we're coming to the end of our discussion from our side of the round table. Is there anything which you would like to add in conclusion from your side?
No, but two things. One, and again, if the objector was here, it was just, you know, we're putting a lot of effort into Hamilton's Tea House, and it's not. I'm not going to be an owner who's kind of remote and putting in a manager to deal with it day to day. I certainly don't have enough money to open a business, put in a manager, and sit in a sun deck in Miami, you know, pulling in the profits. I will be there every minute that it's open, every day of the week. I will be the manager, the bottle wash, the barista, and the toilet cleaner. So I will be controlling what goes on at Hamilton's Tea House. And then with regards to the video, you know, because when the objection came through, there were concerning matters with regards to Downing Street in the evening being used as a drag strip with boy racers and lots of noise. But again, as mentioned about the video, it looks like the objector is residentially down at the end of, you know, above the chemist or the electric bike shop, because the intoxicated people enjoying themselves were coming out of the Lost Boy, which is a very large pub, which has an incredibly large beer garden. And and because of the last 18 months with the pandemic and people being outside and having to use beer gardens, you know, it has been well used. But certainly I've seen no evidence, and I've spent a lot of time, I've lived in Farnham for 2 years, and I've spent a lot of time over the last 6 months spending every minute of every day at every different times of day down on Downing Street, so that I can look at footfall, my potential audience, my peaks and troughs, you know, as the potentials in the business. And again, it's not commonplace to see lots and lots of drunken people walking up and down Downing Street. It's once in a while. It's certainly not a problem that I would worry, because I'm going to have my family there. My daughter is young, and she'll be, you know, coming in and, you know, coming down to see me after school when I'm in there in the evenings prepping for the next day. So if I was concerned that Downing Street was a rat run or a dangerous place, I would probably have looked for it in a different location in the first place. As far as I'm concerned, Downing Street is a very lovely, safe place, yet with a great mix of residential and independent businesses. And I don't believe that it has a major problem on that front. And it's certainly not a problem that I'd be adding to. If anything, you know, I would help all of the other residents, because first and foremostly for the businesses in the town, businesses on Downing Street and the residents of Downing Street, I want to be a long-term good neighbour.
Thank you for that. I think the next step in the process really is that we will need to go away and make our own judgment or a conclusion as to the licensing proposal. So if we should adjourn, and if you'd like to hang around, we will give you our final decision when we come to that. Thank you. Are we back online? Thank you for your patience, Mr. Hamilton. We've discussed at length your application, and are very pleased to say that we have had no objection at all to granting the license as applied. And it certainly falls within our licensing policy. And we've given consideration to the, of course, to the objector. But in conclusion, I think we find that his objection is more on speculation, and if there is in the future excessive rowdiness and misbehavior late into the evening, he can always complain, and that can be brought in, and the council can reconsider the application. So license granted, as far as we're concerned. You'll get a written confirmation of that within the next 7 days. And to that extent, we've completed that particular item on the agenda. And as there are no others, I believe that we can now conclude the meeting